Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Training Podcast. And I'm going to throw some stats out for you today around the episode. But did you know that close to 70% of American adults are either overweight or obese? Each year, about 45 million people in this country go on a diet. The U.S. consumer spends about $109 million every day on diet and weight loss products. Annually, the weight loss industry is about $60 billion. And right now on Amazon, there's over 65,000 weight loss books and 365,000 fitness books. And yet 98% of diets fail. That's what we're going to get into today with our amazing guest, Miss Tricia Nelson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I'm so happy to be here.
Likewise. And, you know, I know that you've spent over 30 years trying to figure out addictive personalities and the hidden causes behind it. And, you know, really, Tricia's an expert in emotional eating. And God, I can't wait. I'm going to learn from this because I know when it hits me. So I can't wait to dive into all of this. So would you mind just giving a quick background, you know, of your history and kind of how you came to find the passion here?
You bet. I grew up as an emotional eater and I didn't relate to that. I mean, I don't even think honestly that term existed when I grew up. But at some point I heard the terms emotional eater and I thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I just like food. So this is what I was telling myself. I just like food, but you know, when the seed is planted, it's hard to unplant it, you know, and so it grows. And I started to observe, you know, my relationship with food and it wasn't normal. It just wasn't normal. So I struggled with food. I struggled with my weight from an early age. I had this roll on my tummy that would scrunch up in my hands and I would imagine cutting it off. And I thought, well, it's just fat after all. And you can cut fat off the side of a steak. So why not? You know, so thank God I didn't try that. But then I had other crazy ideas like, oh, maybe I'll get a disease and lose weight automatically because I won't have to diet or I'll join the army and they'll force me to exercise at boot camp. So, you know, I was kind of out there.
Yeah. Well, it's so crazy how the brain goes too, you know, when you start to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. You know, when you feel desperate and you can't get a hold of it, you know, and you feel out of control, that's exactly what happens. Your brain goes nuts. So, you know, what happened for me is I did the usual diets, exercise programs, pills, potions, and lotions. And no matter what I tried, even if I lost weight for a period of time, I did always put it back. So that, you know, that merry-go-round was my life, the roller coaster ride of gaining 20, losing 10, gaining 30, losing 5. You know, one summer I struggled with 5 pounds the whole summer, like just up and down, up and down, up and down. So you know, what I did come to finally see is that I am an emotional eater and I was using food to numb feelings of stress, pain, fear, guilt, you know, worry, loneliness, all kinds of things that had nothing to do with nutrition. And that was really my problem. So after trying so many different things, I even went to 12-step programs and eating disorders therapy. So I did a lot of different things, but nothing really worked for any length of time. So it wasn't until I met somebody who could really mentor me and showed me that my problem goes much deeper. So I was finally helped to go, you know, dive deeper and look at the underlying causes of why I was compelled to eat. And that was a game changer for me. That changed everything and enabled me to finally lose weight. I lost over 50 pounds and kept it off. And that's, you know, I've been in a thin body, you know, since then. And that was 30 years ago by the grace of God. So I'm very, very grateful, but it took a real change in my paradigm, you know, out of the diet and exercise mode and into the deeper exploration of my emotions and also self-care.
Yeah. You know, and I've talked to some people on the show before, and you know, one of the things that I always talked about is your vision of yourself into the future is so powerful. And whether that vision is what you want or what you don't want, and then the brain and the judgment that occurs and the attachment to things and, you know, and the resistance that just the BS that your mind makes up. So, you know, It is amazing. And so, you know, I know that you've got a book and then a program, and I would love for you to dive into, maybe we can get into some, you know, details around, you know, I know you said that the book is 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating. And I'd love for you to go into kind of a overview of that.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, what happened for me is I got help and then I was living this new life, and the life had a lot to do with my self-care. And as I said, going deeper in my emotional life. And what happened was I worked with my mentor for many years to help other people. We partnered up and helped many people. And then about 4 years ago, I started Heal Your Hunger, which is an online program for people all around the world, for women especially. So basically what happened is that everything I was doing to heal, and everything I had done to heal, I just really codified it in a process, a very specific process for healing. So people who do struggle with food and weight, who are on the merry-go-round, of weight loss and roller coaster ride, this is a very clear-cut step-by-step process. So my book is called Heal Your Hunger: 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. And the beautiful thing is it's not hit or miss. So much of the time when people are trying to deal with their food issues, they're just taking stabs at it. And there's not a real clear-cut formula for overcoming it. It's like, oh, just use moderation, which to me was a 4-letter word, because I couldn't moderate. Like once I started eating cake, all I wanted is more cake, so but once I ate like Hershey's Kisses, I wanted the whole bag of Hershey's Kisses. So this idea of moderation, to me was a joke. I couldn't do it. I could not moderate, especially sugar and carbs. I was so addicted. So anyway, the point is there's a lot of advice out there, like intuitive eating, moderation, mindful eating, all these things that, there's sound principles. There's nothing wrong with them. But if somebody is an emotional eater, like I was, and they've sort of blown out their ability to moderate, their ability to control, they need something more, and that's really what I do is I help people who might frequently binge, definitely go overboard and feel bad about themselves, or always trying to make up for all the calories that they put in their bodies, work it off. I could never exercise as much as I ate, when I was in that kind of binge mode. There's, forget about it. I have to exercise for 10 hours a day.
Well, and I think the key thing that I'm picking up, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, is, there's all these different diets out there, and really, truly, a lot of them, I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of them work, but it's not reaching the deeper mental, what's going on in the brain, what's going on in the body emotionally, the thoughts and how thoughts and feelings react to each other, and make that cyclical, which is really the reason why people then go on a diet and then gain it all back and go on a diet, because they're not willing to go deep enough. And I know in your book, the parts that I've read, you talk about it, it's a deeper issue. And I would love for you to be clear with the audience and, explain your definition of what emotional eating is. And then maybe we can go into some of that deeper stuff that you've experienced and you've seen with your clients.
You bet. So the emotional eating is really just stuffing your emotions with food, and that might sound strange, but I think honestly, we all have we have the capacity to emotionally eat. We're all hardwired to seek comfort from food. Food is very comforting, starting with breastfeeding. There's an emotional bond we have from breastfeeding. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that, many people go overboard with it to the point where they feel sick, or hate themselves. That was me. I mean, I just, if I binged, I had a whole day afterwards of self-recrimination. I'm so lazy, or I can't believe I did that. I should know better. What's wrong with me? Blah, blah, blah. And that, thinking negative thoughts about ourselves just impacts, and really just makes the whole problem worse. So that's basically emotional eating, is just using food to anesthetize feelings. And I'm going to talk about the 3 primary emotions for emotional eaters, because I think this helps people maybe tune in to what's going on. And it's a quick way of checking yourself, when you are feeling like I have to have chocolate, like I'm going to die if I don't have chocolate. So, and I call it the PEP test. So the PEP test is a way of identifying the 3 top emotions for emotional eaters. And there's other emotions, and I can get into those, but the PEP is an acronym, PEP. So the first P stands for painkiller. And this is when, this is honestly why we love carby, sugary foods, because they kill the pain. They do a really good job of just helping us check out. We're not we're typically not binging on romaine hearts, as yummy as they are. because they're not like deadening that feeling that we have of, oh my God, life is hard. Life is hard. My situation is stressful. I'm really angry about getting shafted at my job. There's so many ways to experience emotional pain. But when we reach for food, heavy foods that just kind of put a blanket on those feelings, that's what we're doing, is we're using food as a painkiller. The E in PEP stands for escape, because the emotional eaters tend to have an inordinate amount of fear. So even though, I was very successful and I did, good things in the world, I still had this underlying fear. Like it was just always in the back of my mind, kind of like the antivirus in the back of your computer. It was just always working me over, this fear and worry. And so we use food as a form of escape, because when we are worried and afraid, food takes us to a faraway place. Like it just, we sit down with our goodies and the TV and we're gone, so that's another reason why we use food, is because of fear. And the last P stands for punishment. We use food as a form of punishment. Why? Because we tend to have guilt. Emotional eaters or overeaters are overfeelers. So we feel a lot. And so, what would roll off a normal person's back is, for me, I'm obsessing about it hours later. Like, what did he mean by that? And why did she say that? And why didn't I get that position? And, we're just always running, running these things, and feeling bad. Like I, screwed up. I mean, if anytime, emotional eaters are so hard on themselves. So anytime we mess up, oh my God, we go to town, just beating the crap out of ourselves. And honestly, food's a good way to do that. When you overeat and then your pants don't fit and you got zits on your face and you cancel your appointment with friends, like what is that? That's self-abuse, And so it just begs the question, why would I do that to myself? And it's because we're super hard on ourselves and we take things hard. So when we do mess up, it's harder for us to just shrug it off, so we beat ourselves up, and food's a great way to do that. So painkiller, escape, and punishment. That's when, if you're feeling like you crave some food and it's not mealtime, it's really not time to eat, ask yourself, what's really going on? Like, am I looking, is there something going on with me that I'm wanting to avoid? Is there something in my life that's just really getting uncomfortable for me and I don't want to deal? Is there something I need to clean up? Am I feeling bad about something? I need to clean it up. So just asking those questions can help somebody start tuning in, and it seems at first like, oh my God, this is so stupid. What does my emotions have to do with my eating? Everything, absolutely everything, so I appreciate you having me on so we can talk about it, so we can start kind of helping people understand that there's a huge causative effect between how we're living and how we're eating.
So that's great stuff. And, can you go into a little bit, if you have it, the science, because obviously there's reactions that are occurring from thoughts and feelings that create this cyclical cycle in the body. And would you be able to
Yes,
dive into some of the details around that?
I would. And I'm glad you asked that, because, the pain, the fear, and the guilt, those primary emotions, they don't just happen. Okay. And so what my experience is with emotional eaters, especially, and just to be clear, emotional eating is a spectrum, and on the low end of the spectrum is maybe, going overboard now and then, on the high end of the spectrum is really food addiction. And that's where I lived. I ate addictively, where I didn't, once I started, I didn't stop. I'd eat the ice cream, then I'd eat the chips, then I'd eat the cookies, and I'd feel disgusting, so I was really more in the, and then, my all ideas about exercise were out the window. Like, it's a good idea to say, oh, I'm going to exercise it off, but there's a point of no return where you don't want to get off the couch, like there's no way I'm getting my yoga pants on or my stretchy pants on. Like, I don't want to see my body. I don't want to feel my body. I don't want to move my body. So that's the problem, is when we lose the power to really, work off what we just ate. But anyway, the point is, it's a spectrum. And I actually have a quiz on my website that people can take. It's a free quiz that'll show them where they are in the spectrum, because that'll help you determine what steps to take to overcome it. But it's an emotional eating quiz, and I just recommend it to people to kind of get a gauge of where they are, in this process of emotional eating and how bad is it. But anyway, the thing about emotional eaters is it's not just about the foods that we're eating. There's a whole, what I call the anatomy of the emotional eater, which is a list of personality traits. Okay. It's a whole bunch of personality traits that make up emotional eating. And what it is, it's ways that we respond to life. So emotional eaters oftentimes have had trauma in their past. They've been abused in some way, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. It's often what sets the ball rolling on the overeating. It was for me. I had sexual abuse as a kid, and I just started eating. Eating's how I coped. It's not the only reason I was an emotional eater, but it definitely, fan the flames. So the thing is, when we have these things early on in life that we experience, troubled childhood, which most people have of trauma of some kind, what happens is we develop these personality traits. For instance, if somebody grows up with an alcoholic, raging father, they're going to develop some sort of, oftentimes either a lot of defiance or a people pleasing nature, where they kind of are always hyper vigilant and looking around to see how they can, placate the dad so that he doesn't go into a rage. Well, that's a survival skill as a kid, but it becomes a real liability as an adult of people pleasing. Mm-hmm. So people pleasing is the number one trait of the 24 traits. I write about them, all 24 in my book, but obviously I'm not going to go through them here, but that's the number one trait, is people pleasing. It's like, well, what does people pleasing have to do with emotional eating? Well, the problem is, when we don't feel good about ourselves, when we want kudos, we want to hear "atta girl," or "you did a great job," or "I couldn't live without," we couldn't have done it without you, which oftentimes fuels emotionally. People pleasing is we want the feel goods. Like, we want people to stroke our ego, plain and simple. And it comes with a price, though. So when we do people please, we're usually doing more than our fair share. We're doing it so that people will be impressed or congratulate us or acknowledge us, and we overdo it. So we end up doing more, we do other people's jobs. We do our kids' homework, we take on the extra projects at work, and we run ourselves ragged. And as if that weren't, enough, what we do is then we're also resentful, because we're like, damn, like, I pulled an all-nighter for this and nobody even thanked me, So the problem with people pleasing is nobody's ever as pleased as we plan on them being. So you put together, the alchemy of, people pleasing, resentment, and being exhausted from all that you did, knocking yourself out. And it's the perfect setup for what I call the "I deserve it" binge. Like, screw them. Like, they're not going to recognize me. Like, I'll recognize myself. I'm going to eat my favorite foods on the way home from work, and sit in front of the TV and eat it. Well, who'd I show? Who'd I show? So, but this is an example, Jason, of why it's really a living problem, not an eating problem. Everybody, when they're unhappy with their weight, they're just going at it on the physical level. Let me work out more. Let me, diet. Let me go on this keto diet. Let me do intermittent fasting. Like, what can I do? What can I do? The new protein powder. It's not about that. Like, it's not about the food, because, 98%, you said at the beginning, 98% of all diets fail. Why? Because we're emotionally eating. So if somebody starts to address that and the underlying, the emotions and the motives, and start changing how we're living, then we're going to make some headway on our weight loss goals, But if we don't stop people pleasing, if we don't stop doing, like, just knocking ourselves out, doing for others, if we don't, and it's not to say we become selfish, but putting self-care first is actually selfless, not selfish. And it's that typical example of putting your oxygen mask on first. It's very apt, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we don't have a whole lot to give to other people. And on top of it, we're stressed out, we're angry, we have a short fuse, and we're unhappy, and our families deserve better than that, and it's just hard for us. I think women especially, it's just so hard for them to take time for themselves. They just feel like, oh, I'm not being a good mom or wife, but it's really not true. Like, when you take care of yourself first, when you put self-care into your life, take time for workouts, take time for walks, take time for prayer, meditation, those things that are restorative and help us like build a resource from within, then we're happier. Then we've got more to give, and we're patient, and all the things we want to be, all the things we're meant to be. So it's really turning this whole idea of, really our culture's way of overdoing on its ear.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple things as my brain's going nuts thinking about this, but the one thing I'd love for you to kind of you've talked about kind of a spectrum from emotional eating to being addicted to food. Um, and I know you've got, and we'll put it in the show notes, the ability to go get the test or to do the test, the free test on your website.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what can you say about the difference? Like, where does the line draw? I know the test will give that to you, but where do you see the line being drawn of somebody who is maybe just emotional eating and completely unaware of their emotions and what's happening to being a food addict?
Yeah. So really the way and the basically in the quiz, it's qualified, like where you are on the quiz is qualified by two things. One is the level of control that you have, and the other is the level of consequences that you have. So somebody, let's say, I mean, we all, have friends or this was not me. I was a food addict, like off the charts. But, I have friends who they'll sometimes just be tired and they'll get a pint of Ben and Jerry's and they'll eat the whole thing. They'll eat the pint of Ben and Jerry's. Now, of course would eat the whole thing, but some people it's like, oh, I hate the whole thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm thinking, yeah, well, of course you would, but like that's how you do it. But but some people are like, oh my God, but then that's it. Like that's once a month or something, and so it doesn't really affect them. So they don't have a lot of consequences and they're not out of control with it. They do it once. It's like, well, I guess I needed that, and then I'm back to my routine and I'm not generally eating sugar or, I'll have one cookie, but they're not going into this dark hole of, self-effacing, binging.
Mhm.
That was me. So that is somebody who has a lot of control and very few consequences if they do go overboard because it's occasional.
Yep.
Okay, they're on the low end of the spectrum. The food addict is somebody who basically has lost control, so they don't have control, and not only that, but they have a ton of consequences. So, I talked to a lot of people who have been at this for decades. Like they've been on the diet roller coaster ride for decades, and their body is showing it. They have joint problems from carrying excess weight. They have depression because they aren't doing proper mental health for themselves. Like food is their mental health plan, they also perhaps are pre-diabetic, heart disease. I mean, there's all kinds of autoimmunity. There's also all kinds of consequences to this thing, not to mention not wanting to have sex, not wanting to be seen in the bedroom with the lights on. I mean, it goes on and on. Wearing black stretchy yoga pants all day long because we can't fit into our regular pants. So there are so many consequences to this problem that don't necessarily people don't think of. But they pile up. The longer somebody lives with this and doesn't address it, at the deeper level, the longer they're compromising their life. And it's, their life might not be bad, good family, good overall health, good productive kids. And it's like, yeah, what am I complaining about? But the thing is they don't realize how much they're giving away, how much food and their obsession with food is really taking from them.
Got it. Well, what would you say from a solution standpoint? Obviously, there's a lot and there's a lot in the book, but obviously there's got to be a starting point, because again, you mentioned it. A lot of times people justify that the behaviors by making them feel good about the behaviors at the time and really just denying that they have any of this stuff. That's me. Like I can go into a store and if I go into Cold Stone, I have to get the gotta have it or the gotta love it or whatever, the big one. I can't settle for the little one. Or, obviously with supersized culture and everything's got to be, you got to get the bigger. I mean, where does that sit? Is that addict or is that just, I am aware of it, but I still go and do it?
Yeah. Well, stress has so much to do with our choices. Okay. So I would start with looking at the stress level in our lives. Most of us overdo,
Yeah.
It's just our culture. The pandemic tried to teach us, to slow down, and it did a good job. It showed us that we're not going to die if we're not running ourselves ragged.
Yeah.
But we can ramp up pretty quickly, so once we get back to normal. So I would say, first things first, I highly recommend that people create a morning routine that gets them centered and still and quiet and tapped into their inner resource. We use food for quick energy. We use food later in the day, because it's quick and easy, coffee, chocolate, things that are quick fixes because we get tired. So starting with a morning routine, meditation, prayer, breathing, exercises, writing, journaling, taking a walk in nature, these things can all put money in our spiritual bank account. And that's what is vital to do. So you put money in your spiritual bank account that you can take withdrawals on later in the day when you get stressed out. If you're just popping out of bed and just running, you're on the treadmill right away, figuratively or literally, and you haven't taken that time for that spiritual nourishment, in my experience, you'll be out of gas later in the day, you'll be out of money and you won't be able to take withdrawals. So just that beginning morning routine is so vital, and it's so self-caring. And it's like, you're telling the universe, I matter, I matter enough. You're telling your family, I matter. Hey, mom or dad, he's taking the quiet time. He's doing a quiet time. Kids take a quiet time. We get a quiet time too, and what's going to happen is you're going to be less stressed. You'll yell less. You won't have as quick a fuse. Then you won't feel as guilty, and you'll just feel more even emotionally. And that will help reduce, the number of times you're going to be reaching for food. So that's vitally important. You can also do it later in the day. I do a meditation late in the day, and you can there's so many apps on your phone now for meditation, but just taking a time out, we've added a lot of stress to our day by the time 5 o'clock rolls around, and I tell people, you'll eat about 200 calories less for dinner if you just, bypass the kitchen when you get home from work, go to your room, light a candle, and just meditate for 10 minutes. Like just wind down that way, intentionally, so that you don't use chips and dip to wind down.
Yep. Well, and obviously a big part of meditation, I've been doing it for years, is awareness, self-awareness. And it seems like that's kind of the place to start. And the other thing too, is it's almost as if we're talking about food, but this can apply to exercise. This can apply to anything that you really want to do. Is why am I not doing it? Why isn't it not working? And then kind of filtering through these particular steps. And one thing I also, when you talk to people, and, with regards to the emotional eating, one of the things we often teach, our health and fitness professionals a lot of time is when we're sitting down with a new client or a new potential client, is to really dig deep. And some people in the industry see that as a sales. I'm prying on their emotions to be able to get them to buy. Now, obviously, if that's the intent, that's not what we teach. But if that's the intent, then, you don't want that. But at the end of the day, it's so vital to dig in, to be able to identify the deeper meaning, the deeper dream, the deeper reasons why they failed, because those are the things that are going to end up allowing you to coach them to success. And I don't know if you agree with that or anything you could add there.
Yeah, no, I actually have a coach training program to train people, health coaches and fitness coaches, to be emotional eating coaches. Because so much of the time, this is the gap. You're sitting there knocking yourself out trying to help a client, but they're going home at the end of the day and they're totally sabotaging everything you've just helped them do. So, and it's a big problem, when you have somebody, a client, you don't realize they're an emotional eater, no matter what you tell them to do, they're going off the rails and they're not doing it. So really important to be able to address that. But I always tell people, start with yourself first. Like, we all could up level our relationship with food. Yeah. So when we do these things ourselves, we take the medicine ourselves and get the benefits, and put more self-care in our lives and have a healthier relationship with food, and don't do the snacky stuff as much. We can use our personal experience to share with our clients. And the thing is, they will love it. Yep. Like, they will be like, oh my God, my skinny mini, fitness instructor actually has struggled with food. Like, what?
And I would say most have.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it's like, but it helps the client feel more relaxed and less alienated, and like, she'll feel connected, like, oh wow, like this person isn't perfect. Because so much of the time emotional eaters want to be like, oh, they're perfect, I suck, you know?
It's
So it's just
crazy.
really
Yeah.
important to realize that, you know, we can use our own personal struggles, you know, instead of pretending we don't have them or hiding them or, you know, feeling like that's not appropriate to be part of the conversation. I totally disagree. Like
I
when
do.
we
Me
talk
too.
about our own stuff, it just makes us real and accessible.
It connects us. You know, our stories
Yeah,
connect us.
totally.
And most people don't want to hear all the great things that you've done. You know, I mean,
Right.
that brings a little credibility, but it's overboard. It's how have you
Yeah.
struggled and what have you overcome?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I know that you've got 7 simple steps, and you
Mhm.
know, obviously to go deep in an hour-long podcast isn't feasible, but would you mind just giving us a quick overview of what those 7 steps are?
Totally. So the first one is basically connection. Like we talked about connection. So they're different in my program. I have a program that people go through online, and I've mixed up the steps a little bit from my book, but I'll give them to you in some order. So one is connection and community. So it's totally vital. You cannot overcome disordered eating on your own. It's just too, you know, food is everywhere. Everybody's pushing it, you know, and it's socially acceptable. And you have to eat. You know, my experience is food addiction is the hardest of all addictions to overcome, bar none. More than heroin, because heroin, you know, you can stop. I mean, if, you know, by the grace of God, but it's like heroin, alcohol. It's like you don't have to do that every day. Whereas food, you have to eat. And if it's your nemesis, it's really hard to deal with it and not go overboard. So getting help and support, getting coached is really vital. And being a part of a community of other people who are going through the same process of healing from this thing makes it so much easier to do. The problem is, you know, it's really crazy. People just don't think of getting coached around their eating. They think of a nutritionist or a dietitian, but they don't think of getting coached on how to eat and have a really healthy relationship with food. You know, they just are like, I'll do it on my own. I don't want people to know, as if they should know. And nobody, you know, typically bats an eye at hiring a trainer. Like, I want to be better physically. I want my body to be in shape. I'm going to hire somebody to help me because God knows I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm not going to push myself the way a trainer will coach, you know, like push me. But when it comes to having like improving and up-leveling our relationship with food, we're like, oh, I don't want anybody to know. I'm not going to get help with that. I should be able to do it on my own. No, it's too hard, you know?
Yeah.
So connection and community is a big one. And all my programs are done in groups. You know, I do some private coaching, but most it's in groups because just knowing you're not the only one who's done crazy things with food is so healing.
Yep.
So that's super important. Then I have something called clean eating. It's the only thing around food that I teach, honestly. I'm not a nutritionist. You know, most people come to me for emotional eating help. They know what to eat. They've read like a jillion books already. You know, it's not really rocket science on how to eat healthy. I mean, you should eat things that are green, you know, should eat healthy protein. And, you know, in my opinion, low carbs, because carbs, you know, unless you're super duper training, you know, carbs will help you gain weight. So, and no sugar. Like sugar, there's nothing redeeming about sugar, you know, and except it tastes good in the moment.
Yeah. And that's the, you know, when people say low carbs, they confuse, you know, the processed carbs, the sugary carbs, that stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally. Yeah. Yams, sweet potatoes, you know, things that are naturally, you know, slow metabolizing carbs are great, especially if you're working out, of course. But yeah, no, I was talking about like chips and potato chips and, you know, like cookies and those kinds of things.
For sure.
But anyway, point is, the only real advice I personally give around eating, because people have so much nutritional knowledge already, but they can't follow through on what they know, is something I call 3-meal magic, which is eating 3 meals with nothing in between, which is not easy to do for somebody who's really into snacking. You know, so somebody whose food life is a little wonky, that's in and of itself is going to be a challenge, you know, and it will be a game changer, because all of a sudden they'll be like, wow, like I am, you know, connected to food at an emotional level. Because right now I'd normally be in the kitchen eating, but it's not mealtime, so I'm not going to. Now what? Like, now what do I do with all these emotions I'm having or stress that I have? So that in and of itself is really powerful, but I do it not so much for diet reasons, but more for helping people identify emotional hunger. Because when you're not eating between meals, you're going to start identifying your hunger and you're going to start digging into it. Is it pain? Is it fear? Is it guilt? What's going on? And then you'll start realizing really what emotional hunger is. Another one of the steps is self-care or centeredness. So getting centered, like I talked about in the morning, and I have something called the 6 self-care success secrets. And these are things that I do every single day. And I do them because they make me feel grounded. They make me feel calm, and they help me throw off stress in the day. And it's like, we have to do something. And this is why, again, diets don't work because if you just take away your favorite foods and your favorite crutches for stress, what are you going to do instead? What are you going to do instead when, life throws you a curveball? You got to have tools. So I teach people self-care tools that help them to be able to deal with stress when it comes up without using food as their means of stress relief.
Would you mind give an example of, what a self-care
meditation?
Yeah, got it.
Meditation. It's like everybody knows they should meditate. So I might get a big eye roll on that one, but basically, everybody knows they should meditate, but for emotional eaters, for somebody who is serious about weight loss, it's vital. It's vital. And you can start with a guided meditation from Insight Timer, or Calm or something. But it's all of them. It's just, like any successful person who's, got a soul, you can feel their soul, they're tapping in the morning. They've got a spiritual life. They've got something. It doesn't have to be formal religion. It's just like connecting to our divine self. That is this really powerful, incredible, guidance system. And if we're not tapping into it, if we're just pretending it's not true, it's not part of who we are, we're missing out on some incredible guidance, some incredible intuition, some incredible help, with life. I need help with life. That's why I do all these things. Life's a lot.
For sure. Especially now.
Yeah. So getting centered, still and quiet, walking, I do something called walk, pray. So I walk and I put my earbuds in, now I put my mask on so nobody knows I'm talking out loud, but I talk to God. I just talk, I talk and I connect, and my walk, pray, I love. It's just yummy. It's relaxing. Spiritual readings, find a book or an inspirational book that you find good, or a page a day thing, from Napoleon Hill or your favorite spiritual leader, whatever. And just get some nourishment, get a dose of spiritual nourishment. Again, we can't stop eating in a vacuum. We have to replace it with something else. And spiritual food is so important. So that's centeredness. Communication is really, really vital. So communication is something emotional eaters aren't good at. We stuff our feelings, we stuff what we want to say. So I tell people, say it, don't stuff it. Say how you feel. Tell people, stop saying you're fine if you're not fine. Don't blow up at people. We blow up when we stuff it. We stuff it long enough, then somebody, some unsuspecting person, gets our blow up. So just day by day, being honest about our feelings and letting people know kind of what's going on with us, and having a dialogue with your loved ones. It's, marriages go south when we don't communicate, when we don't see what's going on. And it's just so healthy to have a regular time of checking in. So communication is vital. Not people pleasing, I have, as I mentioned, the anatomy of the emotional eater. I outline that in my book. It's not one of the 7 steps, but it's definitely an important part of changing, is to really look at those personality traits and start making changes, putting boundaries on our time, so important. Don't be, a superwoman, really, really be kind to yourself and let people know you sometimes just can't do what they're asking. Say, no, I have too much on my plate. I'm so sorry. I can't do it. Ask somebody else. And they will. They're fine. They'll get over it, So they all start with C, all these ones. Consciousness is another one. And consciousness is basically just doing things that can help up-level our feeling of oneness in the world. When we don't realize that we're all brothers and sisters on this planet, we tend to have our dukes up and be a little afraid and feel separate. And that feeling of separate can fuel our addictions. So just reading things, again, this kind of getting this personal development, spiritual path is so vital to realize that we're all one. Like my negative thoughts about that person, it not only affects them, it affects me as well. Both are affected. And so just realizing that how I live does have a ripple effect in the world. So just do anything I can do, stop gossiping, pick up trash, anything I can do to help this collective one is going to help, so much. So another one is courage. Like all these things I'm talking about takes courage, takes so much courage. Really, really vital that we just do a little bit each day to walk through our fears. Fear is very, for emotional eaters or eaters, especially, we tend to have a lot of fear. I certainly always have. I still do, but all these things I'm telling you about help lessen my fear so I can walk in and do bold things in my life, and so, and that's what I want. I want to live fully. And when we're eating, when we're spending our life obsessed with food or drinking or smoking pot or doing things that, we're hiding and we're not being our best selves, and we use addictions basically to avoid, things that we're afraid of. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's so important that we reach out for help and get support and get coached, and get support. I mean, it takes a village for me. I mean, I have girlfriends that I'm always calling on. I own my own business. I have entrepreneurs that I get support from. I mean, you're doing some big stuff in the world, Jason.
Thank you.
We don't do it alone. We can't do it alone. We need, and as much support as possible. And it's just, I think it's just our culture where we think we should be able to do it on our own. But I'm totally surrendered to the fact that I need a lot of help, and I get it. And self-care is a big part of it. So I don't know if I gave you all 7 of them. So
we have connection, community, clean eating, centeredness, self-care, communication, consciousness, courage.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Well, and at the end of the day, I think a message that I'm hearing loud and clear, and if people aren't hearing this, is what we're talking about today isn't something that is probably the easiest way to go about doing what we need to do, but it's the most fulfilling and most effective way if you're going to take the time to figure out you and dive deep and be open enough to dive deep into this, some of the things that you probably have pushed away for years and years and years and never wanted to talk or think about ever again.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. We're, our personal journey is, it's such a rich resource for us, so long as we're getting help. If we're trying to do it on our own, it's going to be a rough go. But if we're getting help and embracing, I tell my clients all the time, like, embrace like your journey to I tell my clients all the time to embrace this journey of healing, instead of cursing it, saying, why do I have this problem? Why do I have to deal with this problem? Other people are normal. They don't have to deal with it. I just say, embrace it. This is your teacher. This is your teacher. The things that have happened to me in my life and having this problem and what it takes to overcome it, the tools I've appropriated in order to heal have made my life better than my life would have been had I not had this problem in the first place. So it really is like, we just have to embrace whatever, crosses we have to bear. And that's easier said than done, and some are obviously easier than others. But the point is, we're here on this, in this lifetime to learn and to grow. And I believe to shine our light. Yep. And if we're using anything addictively, we're not shining our light, we're hiding, so whatever it takes to overcome that problem, we will become better in the process, because first of all, we'll have more compassion for other people who have problems when we've admitted our own. Yep. But we'll develop new skills and new tools that'll just make every part of our life better, and we, we're here to shine our light.
That's it, and it's okay. I think just people understanding that it's okay that you failed. It's okay that things have happened. It's how you take that and twist it into a story that's going to help you grow from it. And there's more people in the world that probably have that same story or that same incident that has happened to you. So this is awesome. Well, anything else, I really appreciate it. I think it's great stuff. And obviously I'll put in the show notes, where you can go after, getting the book or connecting with Tricia. But anything else that you have to add that you can leave the audience with?
I would just say, I think I've said it, but I would say don't do it alone. Reach out for help. There is help. That's a nice thing, is there's actually a way out. You don't have to struggle anymore. You don't have to stay on that roller coaster ride. And it's just, one step of just reaching out can make all the difference in the world. And I also always love to say it's not about the food.
Yeah, that's the truth. It is. So, well, I can't thank you enough. This has been great, and I can't wait to dive into the book even deeper. And again, anybody out there, that is very more interested, we'll get you involved and click on the show notes, and you'll be able to find out where you can get the book and read it and come in connection. So I can't thank you enough for being a guest, and maybe we'll run it back later as we get going.
Thanks for having me. Congratulations for your show. That's just going gangbusters.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.